Welcome to Remembering You, a space for slowing down, seeing again, and gathering the parts of yourself that the world asked you to forget.
Each week, we wander through stories, ancient, personal, and collective, to explore how perspective changes everything. How what we look at and how we look can open doors to who we truly are.
Take a breath, feel your feet.
You've arrived.
Let's begin remembering you.
Hi.
Hi.
I was with a group of men yesterday, and in this social setting, I was talking to a pastor, and he made reference to his Enneagram type multiple times throughout the evening. I loved it. It was fantastic.
It's a great framework to have.
It was everything that I could do to not ask questions directly related to his Enneagram type. Like,
Was he being his Enneagram type very explicitly?
he was doing a good job of towing the party line, which that makes me ask a question.
What's that?
So let's talk about the Enneagram today.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about what it is and the
Yes.
history behind it.
Yeah. It's got a really cool history.
But before we get started, I would love to hear from you as a practitioner, as a facilitator of the Enneagram assessment and helping people in the corporate world navigate their experience in corporate, but also in personal life. What do you see as the biggest benefit for someone to have this study in their life of what is the Enneagram and how do I, in my experience, relate to it? Like from all of the years of experience of you being a facilitator, what are some things that you have taken from that experience?
So this is a personality typing system for anybody who's not aware of what the heck the Enneagram is. It's a personality framework. That's how it's framed in kind of just everyday culture, modern, certainly in the corporate world. And that's true at a level. It's actually pointing at something much, much bigger than that. But in the corporate world, when I was at Dell, I was there for 6 years and typed more than 500 people. So I had lots and lots and lots of conversations. So when, somebody would take the assessment and they'd get their report, and then I would do at least a 30-minute conversation with them, just helping them understand, because, they'd get this huge 22 or 40-page report, depending on which one their team had paid for. And there's a lot of information in there. And so it's just like, what do I do with it? And the thing that I found most interesting was people would almost universally say the same thing, which was an excited, oh my gosh, how does this thing know me so well? Or a very nervous, oh my gosh, how does this thing know me so well? Like it feels like it's been reading my personal diaries. It feels like it's inside my head, and now I feel very exposed. And so from that, it's like it gave them language for a thing that they didn't have words for. And so then that helps them see themselves more clearly, or their colleagues. So the other benefit was, let's say I'm giving a whole team their Enneagram type, and then we would do at least 4 hour-long sessions in the month or so that followed. Like, let's walk through kind of the different working parts that are creating this framework. And there was one colleague that I worked very closely with, and she said to me, she's like, this has been so helpful, so-and-so that I have to work with on lots of different projects. I've kind of been resentful. She drives me nuts. Like, I always hated being on calls with her because she just seems so pushy. And she's like, but now I understand. She's this particular type who just has very direct conversations and really prefers to communicate in a particular kind of way. And of course, she is a very different type who just has a more indirect way of communicating. And so to her, it felt really rude. And she just kind of had been resentful about it and didn't know what to do. She's like, oh, now I just understand that's her personality type. And she's like, it's so fascinating the way all of my irritation just dissolves. Like, now I see her doing that thing and I understand why, and I don't take it personally. It's just like, this is so wonderful. And I was like, yeah. So that was the other, just understanding the differences between how the people around you are communicating, and then it's like it can take away the reactivity or because it's, this is what we do when we don't understand something. We kind of like, we label it and we're like, I don't like that and that's wrong. And so having some clarity, I think, can help relax people's defensiveness. And then maybe a bit more compassion and understanding can come online, which is beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question.
One follow-up. How is the Enneagram not to be used?
Oh, geez. It is not who you are.
What? I took a personality type test to learn out who I am.
So it should not be used.
Check, please.
Yeah, which I know sounds kind of weird. It is not to be used. So do not use it as an excuse for your bad habits.
But I'm a 9. I don't have to be pinned down and make a decision.
Now, so I'm a type 7, which is very optimistic, future forward thinking, always seeing the silver lining, always dreaming of the bright, sparkly future. And so when I first was learning this framework and I learned my personality type, and then I would watch myself 1,000 times a day escape the present moment and think about the future and what I want to do next as a way to just not have to look too closely at what's going on right now. So there's a way in which I can conclude, well, that's just who I am. And so, there's just nothing I can do about it. And it's like, no. This is supposed to be a wake-up call. This is showing you the thing that you do or think or feel over and over and over and over and over. It's your patterns. And so now that you can see them more clearly, what are you going to do to change it? And release the things that are... Now, some of our patterns are pretty innocuous and we don't, they're not like causing major problems in our life. And so that, so also like take it with a grain of salt and don't get too hard on yourself. But like be willing to be honest about the things that are causing some internal or external friction, and then fucking do something about it. Yeah, don't use it as an excuse to keep doing the same old thing.
My get out of jail free card.
Right. Yep. And that's hard. I mean, that takes an enormous amount of courage. It's uncomfortable. So go slowly and be kind.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then how were you showing up in life and experiencing your experience when you first discovered the Enneagram?
Oh, like what was going on for me?
The genesis.
Well, this was all part of my early awakening, so to say, that started back in like 2018. So I was finding words for my feelings, and I'd been a psychologist for more than a decade. I'd been a reader of psychology. Like I've said on this podcast, I started reading books on psychology when I was 10. So I'd always been interested, but gosh, how do I want to say this? It's almost like I wasn't ready until I was ready. And I think that's pretty true for a lot of people.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my 20s and my 30s were spent just kind of in my autopilot ways. And I was trying to, I knew there was something there. Like I kept a journal and I was always, and I was noticing, like, there was this nagging sense that I'm not seeing something. And I'd gone to therapies before, so I was always open. And then I think as my marriage crumbled and I finally found a community that was actually doing the work. And so I was surrounded by people who were modeling for me how to look more deeply. And so one of the women in my women's group, her and her partner had recently been certified for the Enneagram assessment of the one that I ended up using. I researched a few of them, and there was a particular company that their statistical analysis and their back end data validation and their internal studies were incredibly rigorous, which was enormously important to me because personality typing systems it's a hard thing to get right, so to say, from a statistical analysis point of view. And the Enneagram itself is kind of poo-pooed in scientific circles as whether or not it is valid. And so so it was important for me to both find one that held that to a high standard. And so I got certified, had a blast. And so that's what I was in my waking up phase. It was probably 2 years after that started. So I was just continuing to accumulate different frameworks and models and practices.
Mm-hmm.
I was adding more and more to my tool belt. So that was one of them. Yeah.
I love that. And I appreciate you acknowledging the word that comes to mind is janky when it comes to personality typing.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
I remember sitting in seminary
Mm-hmm.
and having somebody talk about what animal are you, personality type test that they were putting forth.
Oh, boy.
And the guy next to me turns and he's like, I'm a retriever. And I'm just like, that's fascinating.
Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the history.
Mm-hmm.
Give us an overview. Where did this come from? And how has it evolved into where it is today?
Mm-hmm. So this is going to be a very short history because we could spend 5 whole podcasts just on unpacking the history itself. We're not going to do that right now. So we could go as far back 6th century BCE. So Pythagoras, who, if you ever heard of the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So this is when geometry is being invented, and Pythagoras viewed geometry and numbers as the fundamental language of the universe itself, which I think most scientifically minded people would agree with. Math is kind of the most fundamental language from a scientific perspective that we have. It's the purest of sciences. And so the symbol of the Enneagram is a circle and a triangle and then a 9-sided kind of hexad. And you put all those together. And so that symbol originated from Pythagoras' ideas. And then we go further into history and we come across Plato, and Plato wrote a text called the Enneads, groups of 9. And so he was exploring the concept of one, or the one, like God, what we probably would, from a religious perspective, would call God, broken down into diverse manifestations. So maybe we could imagine a 9 sided diamond. And so how would God or the one be reflected on each of those 9 sides? And then we go further, maybe another century or so. We have the Christian Desert Fathers. So there's a Christian Desert Father, Evagrius Botanicus, and he identified 8 primary thoughts, feelings, desires that separated us from God or from perceiving reality clearly. And that Pope Gregory later condensed those into the 7 deadly sins. So there's a connection between the Enneagram and the 7 deadly sins. And then in modern times, there was a more modern psychologist that refined those and then expanded them back into 9. So, and then we come into the modern kind of psychology within the last 150 years, and you've got a number of people who then took all this enormous body of work. And it wasn't just the Christian Desert Fathers, like both Sufis and Jewish mystics also have their own branches of, if we observe ourselves, that in a sense our inner world reflects structural concepts that are found in probably every spiritual tradition across the world, but particularly the Sufis and the Jewish mystics and the Christian mystics. So it goes pretty deep. Like the Enneagram fundamentally is talking about our most intimate, profound experiences as humans, which within the Enneagram have been. So there's a psychologist named Almas, A.H. Almas, and he wrote a book on the holy ideas of the Enneagram, which are the kind of like the spiritual manifestations of these 9 things that separate us from either perceiving reality clearly or separate us from God if we are religiously minded. And so that's kind of fundamentally the history.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a long and winding path, and it's delightful. I find it so much fun that there's a thing to connect to that is that old.
Mm.
Well, there's not much of that going around in our modern Western world. And so it's one of these ideas that have just persisted for thousands and thousands of years. And so, like I think we should not dismiss it out of hand and just maybe get a little curious about it and see in what way might it reflect something that is true.
Sure.
We don't need to take it literally and, too rigidly, but just does it evoke anything within us that is like, oh, wow, yeah, that connects to something that I can actually feel.
Oh, I could definitely take this and become a fundamentalist about it.
I mean, that's fun for a minute.
What I love about these folks that you have pointed to is they were asking the questions of who am I?
Yeah.
And what is this that is called life?
Yeah.
And how do we explain it? I know a lot about the history of the Desert Fathers and Mothers. And these were folks who felt a calling to leave their culture and to go and isolate themselves to seek God. And there was an idea that each of them carried that if we separate ourselves from culture, somehow we'll be closer to God.
Oh, like we'll be able to perceive God more clearly, kind of thing.
There won't be the distractions.
Yeah,
the
sure.
sin that so easily besets us will be set aside by
It's a totally understandable idea.
Going and living on top of a mountain and being a monk and not seeing people for years and some even decades, which each of them eventually found the fact that their demons were not on the outside.
Nope.
And I'm using it not in the literal sense of demons.
Oh, yeah.
We could also take the idea of the shadow.
Yeah.
Their shadow was within,
Yeah.
and it only intensified their experience with the shadow or their demons when they were alone because they didn't have the distractions on the outside. And so as a Jesus-loving mystic, that just gets me all excited because I have followed that path of withdrawal and isolation and silence and solitude, and through it have come to surrender to some pretty big questions that are unanswerable, and there are also some breadcrumbs as to what my psyche can handle and embrace, and also wants to run from and hide and reject, and et cetera. And so all of that to say, I love the Enneagram in a way because it is the lineage of inquiry and asking
Yeah.
big questions. And our psyche as humans has stayed pretty consistent in the way that it has shown up for thousands and thousands of years.
Yep.
And I like to think that because I have a smartphone and a smartwatch and a car that can talk to me, that somehow I have evolved and I still have the same psyche that is being revealed as these forefathers of the Enneagram path.
Yeah, the clock of evolution runs on billions of years, not thousands. So yeah, we're not any different in a meaningful kind of way from humans who lived thousands of years ago. So we still got the same wiring, we still got the same hardware. We might have different software problems, so to say, but the same underlying structure is there. So of course it's going to manifest the same kinds of problems.
So one thing that we are not going to say in this podcast is that the Enneagram is factual in a scientific way.
Well,
so
what do you mean by that?
Yeah, unpack that. What is the scientific perspective on myth and reality? What is the
the story of the Enneagram versus
the science of the Enneagram? Because in the same way that maybe Myers-Briggs or some of the other personality tests or ways of defining who I am or who somebody is, scientific method doesn't necessarily make space for validation in some of those.
Well, they're asking a different question in a sense. So like the Big Five or Myers-Briggs, they're looking at traits. So things like extroversion versus introversion, or agreeableness or conscientiousness. And I mean, those are things that are valid.
And a part of our personality.
Right. Yes. Yeah, you could put it in the bucket of personality. Enneagram is just looking at a different layer of the human experience. And so you can create an Enneagram assessment that is either valid or not based on, you can follow all of the rules of statistical. I mean, we know, and like it's a pretty robust, well understood science. Like, how do you create how do you ask people questions? And let's say, we have measures of, is it internally consistent? So if the same person takes the same test, are they going to get the same result? Is it externally valid? Does me as an Enneagram type 7 and another type 7 and another type 7, like, are we consistent across, certain kinds of criteria? And, like the company that I ended up working with to administer the assessments, like they ran huge validation studies, like when I got certified, they had just done a big validation study with Google employees, with more than 5,000 Google employees. And they spent an enormous amount of time and money there's a way in which you can ask questions that lead people pretty reliably in directions that are like not actually going to give you a valid result, versus how do you just structure the assessment so that it's actually telling you something useful. And in that regard, you can create an Enneagram assessment that is valid. It's just different from the way that an assessment that is trying to get at, are you extroverted or introverted, or are you conscientious or maybe less so, or are you agreeable or do you tend to disagree? So, so in that way, they're different, and it's not. I don't think one is better than another. They're just different. Depends on what you're interested in. Personally, I mean, I am somebody who is notoriously unsatisfied with surface level answers, and so I never found Myers-Briggs or Ocean, the Big Five, to be particularly interesting, because it's just like, well, okay, fine, I'm an extrovert. Like, that doesn't feel very satisfying to me. It's like, well, what do I do with that? Whereas as a 7, having my Enneagram type tells me I have a very reliable pattern of wanting to look for the future and find the optimistic lens, because it's uncomfortable for me to look too closely at what might be risky or what might go wrong. And that has its roots in my childhood. And that has been a super helpful thing to have pointed out to me. Like, I'm not the only, like, all 7s kind of share that in common. Like, that's just, I guess, for those who might be skeptical of the Enneagram, I would pose the question, if you look at, like, we know development in childhood has a particular kind of pattern. We unpacked that in the last episode, for example, one of the frameworks for that. So, we're all born with basic needs. Those needs are pretty cut and dry, and it's reasonable to think that the way in which those needs were met or not are going to then create patterns of thinking and feeling and behaving that are measurable. And they're going to follow a pattern, because our underlying structure is, I mean, it's complex, but it's not like infinitely complex. It's not like we can't wrap our arms around it. And so it just would follow that if we have 10 sort of building block pieces to work with, we can organize them in particular sorts of structures, and we get particular patterns in our personality that are measurable in ways that go beyond just, are you extroverted or introverted? Like, we can get more complex than that in a way that is valid. And so that's, the Enneagram does that in a way that I just delight in. And you can also test it for yourself. Like, you could take a valid Enneagram assessment and just see what it says, and then get curious and ask yourself, does it actually reflect anything that's true about you? And if it does, well, that's kind of helpful. And so just use what is helpful and discard the things that are not. And so that's kind of an easy check as well.
Thank you. Give an outline. Where are we going to go today? Because as an expert, as a elder of the Enneagram, you could spend
Jesus
a whole lot of time.
Yeah. Rein me in, please.
Unpacking this. So let's give ourselves a framework.
Yeah.
What do we want to hit in this? Like, what's the big picture, and then what are some of the points that we're going to drop into?
So I think it's going to be helpful to talk about the idea of an Enneagram fixation, and more generally, just what is a personality, and how do we get kind of locked in or fixated on a particular thread of thinking and feeling and behaving. And I love that the Enneagram addresses all three of those things. So that's maybe something important to understand
Mhm.
about personality is it's about thoughts and feelings and behaviors. And then I think we should talk about the holy ideas.
Mm.
Um, because and that may feel a bit spiritual and non-dual and a bit out there and a bit but I well, I mean, both you and I love this kind of thing,
Mhm.
but it is the most fundamental layer. And so why not just go right to the source, so to say? We could totally spend episodes and episodes dancing around up at the, middle layers, so to say, or up at the surface. And those are fun and valid too, but I think you and I enjoy soaking in the depths.
Let's get in some weeds.
So let's do that. Yeah.
I was first introduced to the Enneagram through Father Richard Rohr in the 2000s. He recorded a couple talks on the Enneagram and then published a book or two about it. And it took modern Christianity by storm.
Oh yeah, lots of controversy.
Mega churches and progressive Christians were taking the Enneagram tests and churches were using them with their staff. And it was a craze. Everybody was super excited about it. And one of Rohr's quotes that continues to stick with me today is that the Enneagram is not primarily a way of discovering what kind of person you are. It is a way of discovering the particular way you learned to hide from who you really are in God.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that fantastic?
That's perfect.
Like one of his themes over and over again are discovering your true self.
Yes.
And being able to cut through all of the defenses, the masks, the facades, the things that we are doing to cope with the pain or the wounds in our life. And in my spiritual experience, it resonated, it rang true that the sacred scriptures pointed to this in that our lives are hidden with Christ in God. And there is this hidden nature and an opportunity for discovery, self-discovery in life. And the Enneagram was a part of me beginning to embrace depth psychology and other ways of relating to my internal workings that I needed beyond just sin, holiness, salvation, damnation. Like I needed some nitty-gritty and some pathways going on the inside.
I want to ask you a question that's not directly related to the Enneagram, so maybe our audience will forgive us for taking a little sidestep. But it's something it's a question that I imagine folks might be asking themselves because it's one that I've asked.
Mhm.
And I think you might have a great answer to it. Why does our psyche do that? Like why? I mean, I could answer it from a scientific perspective, but I'm curious what you would say as a spiritual director. Like, why do we obscure ourselves from God, so to say? Like, what? So if you take Richard Rohr's ideas, like, why does this happen?
Mhm. It doesn't matter where we grew up. It doesn't matter when we grow up. We all grow up with a sense of self that has been constructed, and then we feel that we need to somehow defend it. The personality structure is what we have to defend because we've constructed it. And whether it was my mom or my dad telling me or saying something that was constructing it, or it was a teacher, or it was society at large. Let me think of a way to. So think of Michelangelo's David.
Mm.
So the story associated with it is that the sculpture isn't creating David from nothing, but Michelangelo in that piece of marble saw what was the true David and knew what needed to be removed from the block of marble to reveal the true self deep within.
So David was already in there. He just chipped away the parts that weren't David, so to say.
100%.
Okay.
And we fight. Like I think of this past week, I was spending time with a friend, and this friend grew up in a culture that looks at a particular expression of human sexuality as the worst thing that could possibly be a part of your life.
Yeah.
And this is something that has been normalized in our world, and yet his faith tradition looks at his desire and curiosity and expression of his, I would say, true self as evil and taboo. And therefore, he is not free to express who he is and follow his true self in that moment. It has nothing to do what his true self is on the inside. It has everything to do with all of the marble that's been piled in around him on the outside that he has created and that he has had given to him. And because of that, he is literally frozen in a block of marble.
Yeah.
Which is a heartbreaking story. And as a spiritual mentor and director and guide, the worst thing in the world would be for me to grab a sledgehammer and start pounding to try to reveal the David within. Like, that's up to life to continue to initiate him into his truest, most authentic, full self, and not for anyone else to do that process. So like, I see Michelangelo and David as one. Like, Michelangelo was revealing himself in that marble that he could see as he removed each little piece by piece.
As he was performing the external action, it was also changing parts of himself inside. Yeah. Which is true for us as well. Yeah.
So to answer your question, it's important that we are asking a question, and maybe we don't ask this question until the wisdom of failure and the running into the rock wall over and over again and dead end after dead end in our experience that moves us from asking, how can I manufacture a better Ryan or a better Alice Ann, and moves us to what needs to fall away so that what God created can become more visible.
I think it's a helpful pointer if we think of, so if the idea of, like, what God created, the fundamental perfection within all of us, if that seems too abstract, or like if we don't have any connected sense of that within ourselves, I think that can be hard to understand. But some really good reminders are the way that babies are born, the way, like, the nature of an infant and of a small toddler, like, before children develop their personalities.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know all babies are kind of born with certain ways of being, just like from day one, so to say. But I mean, before they go through that socialization process, they are
Pure consciousness.
just,
Uh-huh.
and you feel it in a
Mhm.
way that is, I mean, it just, you can't ignore it. Like, and it's reminding you of who you are, of who every single one of us are.
Mhm.
Or a dog is
Mhm.
also pure consciousness, just utterly
Mhm.
connected to the perfection that that is consciousness. And like that pure little soul, I mean, it just pierces through everything within us that wants to push it away or deny it. And
Mhm.
you can't anymore.
Mhm.
And so I think those are for me anyway, they've always been very, very strong. Like, I can connect right to that and feel like, oh, there's something there. And the more I have done my own work, like Michelangelo, chipping away and finding my own David within, it's like it really is that.
Mhm. Mhm. So for me, the Enneagram has helped me identify what I've come to believe that I need to have in order to survive. And it's shifted my attention and my way of being in the world to asking the question, like, what is underneath my strategy to
Mhm.
survive?
Mhm.
And keeping that marble intact and the block visible, like that was a strategy of protecting all of
Mhm.
the conditioning and programming of I would I would s- put it within the context of first half and second half of life.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes the marble needs to fall off the workbench and crash into 1,000 pieces on the floor in order to reveal what is on the inside.
Mhm.
And then the metaphor starts to break apart when you're thinking about trying to glue marble back together. Not so much of a good idea.
Yes. So so we've kind of already, I guess we'll more explicitly define what personality is.
Mm.
Perhaps that would be helpful.
Mhm.
Um, so personality is not who you are. It is th- the thing your mind and your heart and your body constructed. It's like a vehicle that you've used to move through life. It's a super helpful, like, it's necessary. It performs all kinds of critical functions. It's not bad. You will need your personality for the entirety of your life. But there are ways in which we construct it that are less helpful or skillful than others. And so it's almost like, um, the challenge is to recognize that this is just a vehicle that is aiding me to function at the layer of everyday. I have a job, I gotta pay my bills, I gotta raise my kids, I have friendships, just the everyday world. We need a thing to operate so that there's some consistency in how I show up. People know what to expect of me. I'm following the social norms. But we just recognize that it's like the car. Like, when we get into our car and drive around to the grocery store, we don't, for the most part, think of our car as ourself. It's just a thing that gets us from point A to point B.
Mhm.
Um, and so our personality should be held in that same kind of way, that there is a deeper essence here that we are meant to connect with more deeply. Uh,
So our psyche learns how I need to be
Mhm.
in the world
Yep.
to be safe.
Yep.
So my personality isn't the enemy,
No, not at all.
although there need to be some chipping
Uh-huh.
and
Polishing.
and polishing and scraping and
Yep.
et cetera. But personality is not the enemy. It was and also continues to be an intelligent way to move through life.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like one of those crabs that we saw on the Texas coast at our most recent trip. Consider crab how the shell protects the vulnerability of the
Mm-hmm.
creature. The shell isn't bad,
Mm-hmm.
but it's what we see, and it's what protects it. The problem would be if we forget that we have a shell, and all of a sudden our focus is just on the shell.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But there's something on the inside.
There's something on the inside.
Mhm.
So before we talk about the insides, I mean, maybe this is going to be easy and we don't need to spend much time here, but the idea of a fixation. So I'm a type 7, you're a type 9. So we can use these as examples. It's probably also helpful to say that within the system of the Enneagram, it's well understood we are not just one type. Like, I have a lot of 2, and a lot of 7, and a lot of 5, and and a lot of 9. Like, I've got a healthy mix, and we all do.
Mm-hmm.
But I do kind of have a center of gravity that I have operated from most of my life, and that would be the 7. So for my type, probably the most painful experience is around being trapped and in pain or limited. So if you've listened to me on this podcast before, you know that I've got a strong rebellious streak.
Strong is a good word.
And that has existed since before. I mean, my mom tells stories from when I was 2 years old and deeply rebellious. So almost since day one, which is a direct reaction to feeling like I am in pain and I am being restricted or maybe too heavily being controlled. And so my autonomy is reacting and saying, absolutely not, which is in a lot of ways, I mean, can be thought of as a healthy, helpful reaction. I mean, obviously, when I was really little, like you have 2 options. I can either collapse and surrender, or I can defend and double down and dig my heels in. And I chose, for whatever reason, my psyche decided we're gonna dig our heels in, and that just became a deeply ingrained pattern that I carried around with me until I learned how to see it clearly, and then I can use my very adult prefrontal cortex, big human brain, and say, "Oh, I see. I am digging my heels in. Perhaps I should think about choosing a different response." But if I feel constrained and in pain, my mind, well, one, that is yucky on the inside, doesn't feel good. So I'm going to go up into my head. I'm going to imagine an escape and think about all of the beautiful, lovely, exciting possibilities that tomorrow may bring, because right now, today feels too painful. So there's this, it aligns with the deadly sin of gluttony. So we tend to think of gluttony as like, I eat too much food, but it is also, I mean, it's anything and everything. It's not just food, it's ideas, it's experiences, it's, I want to savor I'm just going to sit in the warm, gooey glow of, I don't know, this new obsession that I have. And so my fixation is on the future and on the possibility so I can escape the discomfort of the present moment. That's what my personality does. Yours does something different. Do you want to tell us what yours does?
So I would be, my primary type is a type 9, which would be a peacemaker.
Mm-hmm.
And peacemaker, one of the gifts of being a peacemaker is being able and having a desire to see all sides of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
The downside of peacemaker is losing oneself in order to make everyone else feel comfortable or safe in the room,
Yeah.
and putting my sense of self second to everyone else's. As a 9, it is paramount to do work around desire, around clean yes and a clean no,
Mm-hmm.
of having a sense of center and ground. There's a lot of work that has to go in to that, because my main survival technique in family, community, and work has always been to make everybody else feel good about what they're experiencing. And again, not having an opinion is not a way to be contributing in a healthy way to the group.
Yes. Yeah. So the idea of the fixations, essentially each type has a core wound that it's kind of managing and building defenses for and building strategies to, so that it's not so painful and so that it's not too disruptive in one's life. And we all have a little bit of each type in us. So we all kind of have, at some level, each of these core fixations. And that is the biggest. So your fixation of always being the peacemaker is a reflection of the thing that you've forgotten from a holy idea perspective. It is, in a sense, your biggest, thickest area of the marble that is obstructing your pure essence.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there anything else we want to say about fixations or how they relate to holy ideas before we talk about the holy ideas?
Oftentimes, fixations are not socially unacceptable. Most of the time, a fixation
Yeah,
is welcomed, honored, and celebrated.
that's a good point. Yep. Yeah, our modern society is kind of rife with, we celebrate many of the wrong things, so to say, the unhelpful ways of constructing one's life. So how would you frame the holy ideas?
So if you've ever been outside at night and you're walking in your yard and all of a sudden every muscle in your body tenses
Mm.
and the hair on your neck stands up, because out of the corner of your eye, just as the sun is setting and it's starting to get dark, there is a object on the ground, and your brain is telling you fight, flight,
Mm-hmm.
run. And then you take a deep breath, calm yourself, and you're like, it's just the garden hose. It's not a snake. So the holy ideas are going to help us begin to see what our response is in certain situations, and the framework that we're in for perceiving who we are and what is going on around us in our experience.
Mm. So learning how to see that the coiled thing on the ground is not a snake, it's actually just a garden hose.
Absolutely. So we probably have a lot of garden hoses in our world, and they will cause us to react, flip out. And so the holy ideas are an opportunity for us to remember that I put the garden hose there,
Mm-hmm.
and to flip a light on and to see, okay, yep, just the garden hose,
Mm-hmm.
and to trust that I can see clearly in a moment, and there may be some things that I need to take into account to help me see clearly, but ultimately, clarity is on the way.
Mm-hmm. So the Enneagram itself is divided into 3 groups of 3. From a kind of everyday human life level, there's the layer of thinking, which is like the head, and feeling, which is like the heart, and intuition or gut, instinctual nature. And so I think we can all connect to that on a very practical level. I have thinking, I have feeling, I have instincts and actions. So similarly, the holy ideas are broken down into 3 dimensions. One kind of looks at the cosmos or the totality of experience. Another bucket looks at how we act and how we function. And the other one looks at kind of humanity as a whole and the nature of our minds. And so perhaps we could break down each of the holy ideas, all 9 of them, and they operate. There is a sequence at which we can follow them that they kind of build on one another. So we're going to use Almas's framework, and we'll walk through each one by one. So the first idea that we could start with is the awareness that all of existence, physical, spiritual, any and everything in between, is one indivisible reality, that it's all interconnected. And the feeling and perception that objects and people and our internal world and our external world, that they are separate, very often opposing entities or experiences, that is a delusion in a sense, or a way we can hold that idea in a way that is unhelpful. And so fundamentally, there is no separation between myself or you or this chair that I'm sitting on or the air that I'm breathing or the food that I eat. And so it's the very first idea is just the understanding of duality and non-duality. The next one is about love. So there is a way in which we can have a direct understanding that this reality is intrinsically loving, benevolent, and supportive. That life and our existence are built on an ocean of love, and that love is conscious. And so if we feel or believe that the universe is this cold, neutral, unfeeling presence, or that our lives don't matter, that's that means we are disconnected from this deeper fundamental layer. And so I think in saying these, it's important to hold the way in which, I know these ideas seem preposterous at one level. And for many, many, many people, this is not our everyday experience of how the world is. And so the shift, like the goal is not to dismiss that or deny one's actual lived experience. It's just to kind of get curious. The next one is the idea of perfection, that reality is complete and pure and intrinsically right. Anything and everything that is happening right now is perfect. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be fixed or modified to make it better. And instead, we very often feel this judgment. We're constantly viewing things through the lens of right or wrong or good or bad. And we tend to have a very deep conviction that things are inherently flawed and must be improved upon. The next one is the idea of will or freedom. So the recognition that all of the movement or the change in the universe is the unified action of our fundamental being. And so true freedom is the total surrender of our personal will and, in a sense, to just be more aligned with the flow of reality as it's moving around us. Rather than us trying to control the direction, can we just surrender to the flow of everything that is around us? And instead, most of us feel like we have a separate personal will that must force and manipulate and orchestrate the outcomes around us. The next one is about harmony or law or hope. It is the awareness of a fundamental law of nature, so to say, that everything is moving or functioning according to interconnected, objective, cosmic laws, and there are no exceptions to that. And so being able to rest in that feeling of there is a fundamental harmony underneath all of this brings us a sense of true hope and peace. Very often, instead, we feel like we have to fabricate our own success or our own value or our own momentum outside of whatever these fundamental laws might be. The next idea is the recognition that essentially we are never separated from our source, that our core being is true. It is the fundamental identity of every living soul. And so when we're disconnected from that, we feel like we have been abandoned, cut off, disconnected from something that we are trying to get back to in a way. And we have 3 left. So the next idea is omniscience or transparency. So it's the awareness that the human soul is an inseparable cell or organ of perception within the universal mind. That our personal boundaries are permeable, they are transparent, that like fundamentally I am not an island. And so the core misperception is that I am an isolated entity. And so I am not just some small observer that is watching reality from behind a wall, that I am actually the eyes of the universe experiencing itself. The next one is about faith and strength. So it is that implicit confidence that our fundamental nature is trustworthy and supportive, that there is a true ground beneath our feet, and that we can tap into that sense of ground and fundamental safety. And when we're not connected to that, reality just feels fundamentally unsafe, and we feel like we have to constantly defend ourselves. And then the very last one is wisdom, or what is called sometimes holy work or the holy plan. And it's just the recognition that reality is unfolding continuously in this present moment according to a universal pattern, and that our transformation happens by staying present to that. And when we aren't connected to that, we feel like we have to plan and scheme and figure out what the future holds in order to ensure that everything goes according to plan. So that is a very high-level overview of what we could think of as the fundamental laws of God or reality.
Wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow.
Yep. Not confusing at all.
Where to from here?
Well, I guess I feel curious, like hearing all of those, how do you hold those ideas in your life? Or like, I know you are pretty deeply connected to the truth of each of those. Would you say that's true?
I traded my King James Bible for the Enneagram. So it might be helpful if you have never pulled up the diagram of the Enneagram with all the numbers and the way that it's separated with 8, 9, and 1 across the top on the right side, 2, 3, and 4, and on the left side, 5, 6, and 7. It might be helpful as go back and re-listen to what Alice-Ann just shared about each of these 9 points, just so you can kind of follow. And then there's some diagrams out there that talk about or give a little bit of instruction as to the body center, the heart center, and the head center, and which types or which numbers are going to be more inclined to moving out from those experiences. And I like to think of the Enneagram types as experiences and not a form, because experience can take on different shapes and evolve and grow. And so it's not something that a pattern or a path or something that's fixed.
Makes it less solid. Yeah.
So if we come back to the illustration of the garden hose, the Enneagram gives a form or a way, maybe a way to process experience in my life. So the thought as I'm in the yard, as the sun is setting, is there's a snake. And then it's the feeling of fear. And then it's the behavior of run, fight, freeze. And then it's the awareness of I need to turn on a light. I need to see this more clearly. And then the holy perception is that it's just a garden hose. There's nothing to do. The new behavior is the body relaxes and I put down the shovel because there's nothing to hurt with the shovel, because it's not really a snake. It's just a garden hose. So our behavior follows that progression as we sit with the why behind the what of our experience. And the Enneagram can be a part of that process of, okay, what is the thought? What is the feeling? What is the behavior? What is the awareness? What's the holy perception? And then what is the new behavior that follows? So organizing our understanding of experience.
Could I turn up the volume on that example and ask for your thoughts on maybe a real life situation that's a bit more charged?
Sure, go ahead.
So how about the experiences we had shortly after we first met, and I lived in a house and on a piece of property with lots of other humans, and you'd moved in with us, and there was some kind of years-long patterns of behavior that had been established in the house where there weren't clear boundaries around how the space was used. So some people looked at it in one kind of way. You and I and my brother saw it differently. And so there was a conflict there. You know, there was these two perspectives were in direct opposition to one another.
And the rules that were set in place were also looked at as from two totally different perspectives.
Yeah. And it was causing lots of personal anguish and interpersonal conflict. And so I'm curious how you would view that situation through these lenses within the Enneagram. Like maybe your own personal, like how you felt through that and what you needed to do or say or not do or say or feel. Like how did that unfold in you?
So to work through a dynamic, just having that simple, what is the event, being able to name the experience, and then how do I see it? What is my perception? And then what are and most of the time it's like the automatic thought that we're having about our perception. And then how does this make us feel, or make me feel?
Mm-hmm.
And then the behavior, how am I responding? And like that response just reinforces the whole loop. And so we found ourselves in a position where the lack of capacity to take on someone else's perspective kept the loop going over and over again. It didn't matter how many times we took on the other party or party's perspective. There just was a incapability of being able to walk a mile in our shoes. And so
Mm-hmm.
like the only thing that there was to do was to gracefully, lovingly, kindly bow out and separate. Because if someone's unable to enter into that space, then I can have all of the pattern recognition in my own experience, or name or articulate however masterfully and with grace and beauty, and it just won't happen for the other person.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how good we are behaving, so to say. It can't change until they're able or willing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was a disruptive enough situation that it would have been unhealthy for us to just continue to stay in it. And so we had to kind of make that hard decision of there's really no other choice but to leave. Yeah, and I imagine I imagine that's a big central tension in whether it's like a workplace environment or a long-term relationship or a friendship or yeah, I think we all face that kind of decision all the time.
So thoughts create meaning
Yeah.
in our experience. So this was our experience. The thought was they're disrespecting my boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling was anger.
Mm-hmm.
And the behavior was confront and try to enforce the rules.
Yep.
Like, and then we also had the experience of the thought being they're trying to control me. Anger and resentment was the feeling, and the behavior was resistance. And then another party, their thought was this conflict could tear our community apart. Feeling was anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
The behavior was avoidance, accommodation, or minimalization.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of those three examples were taking place, and it just made everything even more dysfunctional.
Yeah.
The experience was the same, but the perspective was different in everybody's
Yes.
case. And again, there was just not being capable of taking on someone else's perspective, which would stop. It was like they couldn't flip on the light to see it's not a snake, it's a garden hose.
Mm-hmm.
And it all could have been avoided.
Help me. I'm feeling through the seeming conflict, perhaps, between the holy ideas and like this particular circumstance or any circumstance where we feel like this relationship with this other person is, I can't stay in it. I have to remove myself from it. So I imagine when people are finding out about ideas of non-duality, like all is one and life is fundamentally peaceful and or loving, like I imagine it would be pretty easy to perhaps do what we could call spiritual bypassing and just not actually deal with the dysfunction that is existing at the personality levels of the people involved, and just like, so
Our stance was, for years, these guidelines, these rules have been too ambiguous. And so we need to clarify and make things apparent and understood.
Mhm.
And so that was our thought and our action.
Mhm.
The way that it was perceived was, you've suddenly changed the rules that we've lived by for years.
Mhm.
And like, it was just, it was oil and water.
Mhm.
So we were saying, hey, let's establish healthier boundaries. The response was, you're taking something away from me.
Mhm.
And then our feeling was, you don't respect our boundaries.
Mhm.
And then the cycle just reinforced itself.
Mhm.
So the gift in my life of the Enneagram is not to help me figure out who's right and who's wrong,
Yeah.
but rather to embrace the holy idea that I can surrender my interpretation for a moment and take on someone else's interpretation.
Mm.
And that's the light being switched and
Mhm.
putting the shovel down and not feeling like I have to chop the head off of the garden hose.
Yeah. So it gives you the capacity to more fully step into somebody else's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it's acknowledging that they have a main type of the way that they see the world or express, or certain things are covering up their true self. And when they're in a healthy, whole perspective, it goes one way, but you can also clearly see, the more that you spend time in the Enneagram, how it shifts and moves, so that someone is in the dark, per se, and not able to see things as clearly. So it gives a little bit of, I would say, grace or kindness, or
Mhm.
being gentle and patient with folks, which you were incredibly patient and kind and gentle with folks over that year process of naming over and over and over again. And they had been patterns that had been going on
Yeah.
since the foundation of the community. And so it was just
Yeah.
not met with curiosity or openness at all.
No. No. I mean, I did really lose my cool a couple of times,
Sure.
but, we're all human, and I had reached my limit of being able to say things nicely.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I'm recognizing, or feeling, like, the thing that I'm kinda moving between, and this has been years and years in the making, um, to really deeply understand and know, like, not understand at a cognitive level, but, like, know in your bones that, for example, everything is held in love, nothing is separate, it's all going according to plan, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't mean that I don't then have to make hard decisions or take actions that are painful, like the choice to move away from that community and find
Mm-hmm.
our own place.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I remember when I was first learning about the holy ideas, I think I held it in the, well, I guess according to my, this is very type 7y. uh I was looking at those very non-dual descriptions as like a panacea that is now going to remove all suffering from my life and make everything this, kind of heaven on earth. And so I think I would feel like I had failed if my life is still bringing me hard things to deal with. And if I am, it's like, so I'm wrestling with it feels like there's a tension between the actual actions that we have to take on the ground and the actual emotions that we feel in the moment. But, when we have interpersonal conflict or inner conflict and the truth of the holy ideas. And I know there's not actually, like, I know that seeming disconnect or tension is just, it's just my own, I'm just still figuring it out, so to say. Anyway, I am enjoying your very practical, this is what I think, this is what I feel, and then this is how I have to act. Like, it helps me hold the holy ideas, I think, more skillfully.
The Enneagram can be a gift to recognize that the experience isn't only conflict between two people. It's the interpretation. It's two separate interpretations of an event.
Mhm.
So as each person sees the situation through a lifetime of experiences, fears, adaptations, and expectations, in our intro, the way we see is what we see.
Mhm.
The way we see can change everything about our lives. And that is the ultimate superpower is being able, again, to look at the marble and to recognize what needs to fall away so that
Mm.
the true, the deeper, the more authentic self is revealed. And then transformation begins to happen when we're curious not only about the other person and how they're seeing things, but also about our own story
Mhm.
and what we're telling ourselves about whatever the behavior or the events are.
Mhm.
I think it's also important to name that the holy idea doesn't ask us to surrender healthy boundaries.
Right.
It asks us to stop confusing our interpretation of reality with reality itself. And then from there, we still say yes, or no, depending on the situation, to set the boundary. And um, we can either hold that tight or let it go. And that gives us a sense of, okay, I'm empowered because I don't have to defend. I can respond in this situation, because normally the default is defend. It's
Mhm.
like to fight,
Mhm.
to prove.
The reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the Enneagram 1 is the improver, 2 is the giver, 3 is the performer, 4 is the individualist, 5 is the observer, 6 is the loyal skeptic, 7 is the enthusiast, 8 is the challenger, and 9 is the peacemaker.
Mhm.
And those will vary and differ depending on which book you're reading.
Mhm. Yeah, their titles are slightly different from one model to the next.
Feels important to say.
Mm. I mean, I think this is definitely a good overview. Um, I guess the only thing that feels perhaps unsaid is this is a really complex framework. It's got a lot of moving parts and layers,
Mm-hmm.
and we scratched the surface of it.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so perhaps we will return and dive more deeply, but that there are lots of really incredible resources out there. And so if you're someone who is wanting to understand yourself and how you think and how you feel and how you act in the world with perhaps through the lens of a framework that might be able to shed some light on some of your patterns, that this is a really, really good one. And it's, it's rooted, especially the three centers, the thinking center and the heart feeling center and the gut instinctual center. Like there's a lot there to be explored and thought about. And so,
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Until next time.
We'll see you then.
Have a cup of Enneagram. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.